Good morning, Year 9. I'm Miss Johnston, and if you don't already know, I'm the Head of English. I've prepared this assembly today to talk you through what to expect from English at Key Stage 4. So you'll be having a number of assemblies on your different subjects, especially your option subjects, to help you decide what to choose and what the right path for you is. Fortunately, or unfortunately, depending on how you look at it, I think it's a great thing. English is compulsory at Key Stage 4, so that means it's not an option, you have to take it. It's a requirement from the government that you pass your English language and literature when you leave school. So it's not something you can opt into or opt out of, it is compulsory. For me, that makes it even more important that you listen really carefully in this assembly, because I'm going to talk you through what to expect from Key Stage 4 English, and more importantly, how you can prepare as well. So in English, we study for two entirely separate qualifications at Key Stage 4. We study GCSE English Language and GCSE English Literature. So at the end of Year 11, you will come out with two completely separate qualifications on different certificates. They're both AQA, but they count as two separate GCSEs. So we're studying for two GCSEs. However, we still only have 10 hours per fortnight on your timetable, which is the same as other subjects such as maths, where you only come out with one GCSE. So straight away, we know that there's a challenge in terms of time. That makes it even more imperative that you make the absolute most of every single lesson. So I'm going to start off with the first GCSE, which is GCSE English Literature. You can see in this diagram here, it breaks it down into the two papers that you'll sit at the end of Year 11. So paper 1 is worth 40%. For that paper, you'll study and write about in the exam Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet and our 19th century prose, or it's called a novella, A Christmas Carol. So in class, you'll learn those texts, you'll go through how to answer questions and how to write essays. And then in your final GCSE exam, you'll do an hour and 45 exam where you'll respond to questions on those texts. Paper 2 is worth 60%. It's a longer paper, and this is a really challenging paper. It's 2 hours and 15 minutes. On this paper, we study and we examine An Inspector Calls, which is a modern play, anthology poetry. And so hopefully you know an anthology is a collection of poems. And for this anthology, there are 15 poems you have to learn and be ready to talk about in the exam or write about in the exam. And then the final section, which is usually the trickiest, is what's called unseen poetry. So on that section, you'll see two poems that you will have never seen before. None of the English teachers will have seen them either. They're completely unseen, brand new poems that you'll have to respond to. So for that part of the exam, we coach you how to read a poem you've never seen before and respond to it in a really perceptive way. So to break that down, for English literature, you study one Shakespeare play, one modern play, one novel, 15 poems, and two unseen poems. So there's an awful lot to learn. It is challenging, but it's also really rewarding. Romeo and Juliet, I absolutely adore, and Inspector Calls is usually students' favourite play to study. There's really interesting themes about identity and gender and power and love and fate. There's so much rich content to explore, and usually we find students really respond and engage in literature. Our students at the Albion Academy absolutely fly in literature. We're one of the highest performing schools in Salford for it. So it is super challenging and there's loads to remember, but it is so rewarding and so enjoyable. So the other qualification is AQA GCSE English Language. Again, you've got two papers, and this diagram breaks down what they are. I'll talk you through it. So paper 1 really boils down to reading and responding to fiction texts. So fiction texts are stories, things that are made up. So in that exam, you have to read a fiction text or part of a text. So it might be an extract from a story, for example, and you have to answer questions about it. So it will ask you for explicit and implicit information. It will ask you for language analysis and evaluation, different skills. Then in section B of that same exam, you have to write your own fiction text, which would be descriptive or narrative writing, which you're used to doing in Key Stage 3, especially through our writing challenges. So again, at our school, we're really good, especially at the writing section. Paper 2 is very similar. You have a reading and a writing section. However, for that text, for that exam, you're studying and responding to non-fiction texts. So those will be things like articles and letters and speeches. Similar to texts like I Am Malala that you studied in year 8, or We Should All Be Feminists that you're studying in year 9. So non-fiction texts about the real world and real sort of social issues. And then again, in the section B of that exam, you have to write your own non-fiction text. So you will be asked to write a letter or an article or a speech on a given topic. Both of the exams in English language and English literature are 1 hour and 45 minutes. Now, they maybe don't sound quite as challenging as the 2 hour, 15-minute exams, but actually they are, because you have to do so much in such a short amount of time. But again, we're great at English at the Albion Academy. We get excellent results. So if you're on board with us and you listen to what we say, you will do really well. So again, to break it down, reading and writing fiction texts, reading and writing non-fiction texts. That's what English language is all about. So how do we succeed in Key Stage 4 English? Well, I've already mentioned that there's so much to cram into those 10 lessons a fortnight, and we're studying for 2 entirely different qualifications. So attendance to every lesson is vital. If you miss one lesson, you're missing a whole chunk of either language or literature. And so you've got to be there every lesson learning. That's really important. Combined with that, additional revision is necessary. So you'll need to keep going over the content to keep it in long-term memory. So for example, if in half term 1 we study Romeo and Juliet, and then in half term 2 we move on to A Christmas Carol, at home, you're going to have to keep going over the Romeo and Juliet content so that you don't forget it. You've got to embed it in your long-term memory so that you can draw upon it and recall it when you need to in the exam. We help you with that through our 5-a-days, which we carry on within Key Stage 4, and we specifically use them for revision. But if you want to do really well in English, additional revision outside of class is also necessary. My third thing is listen to your teacher. We're the experts, and like I've said, I keep going on about it, but it's because we're proud of ourselves. We're really good at English at the Albion. We have the best results in the whole academy, some of the best results in Salford, genuinely really, really high, and students in our school make exceptional progress in English. So what we learn from that is that when you listen to us, when you trust that we're the experts and we know what we're doing, then students fly, and that's what you need to do as well. And then my final thing is learn from your big writes. So you're used to doing assessments and writing challenges. In Key Stage 4, they become even more intense in that they're marked really thoroughly by or even more thoroughly by your teacher, and we give you really in-depth feedback. We know from experience that the students that listen and learn from that feedback and really sort of soak it in, they improve the quickest. And they end up getting the best results. So that's absolutely vital to succeeding in Key Stage 4 English. So my final thing to talk you through is how can you prepare now for year 10? We're not there yet, but it's fast approaching. So you can do some research of the key texts, such as Romeo and Juliet. Even watching the film adaptations can be really useful for just getting the plot and the characters in your head. Listen carefully to your teacher now. So no, you're not in year 10 yet, you've not started the GCSE, but every single thing you do in class is us preparing you for that GCSE. It's getting you ready for year 10 and year 11. So being there and listening carefully will give you the best head start possible for when you start in year 10. And finally, learn from your assessments and feedback. Commit to improving. So yeah, the feedback becomes more rigorous and detailed in Key Stage 4, but the feedback you're getting now, again, it's giving you that head start. It's whatever feedback you get now is feedback that you don't need to get in year 10, because in year 10, you'll be moving on and moving up, and your grades will be increasing and increasing. So make sure that you're listening carefully, attending every lesson, and just making the most of every minute with your teacher, because we really are the experts. We know what we're doing, and we know how to get you excellent GCSE results when you work with us and when you trust us. So I hope that's been useful. If you have any questions about anything from today's assembly, feel free to either ask your form tutor, who could then collate a list of questions and send them to me, and I can respond, or you can just ask your English teacher in class at an appropriate time, or come up to me and ask me anything that you need to. I'm always here to help. But I'm really excited for the next cohort, you, to be our year 10 and year 11. I think you'll do really well. And if you take on board everything I've said today, you will absolutely fly and succeed and get even better grades than what we've got in the past. Thank you so much.